G'day guys, this is David Nerador from the Xylem Zone. Just coming to you from beautiful Mount Tamborine, looking down to the Gold Coast there. Don't know if you can see all the high-rise in the distance down there. But I thought I'd come to you with another one of short videos on the cons of property investing and how to avoid them. And I've been doing a little bit of a series on off-the-plan property because it's probably the one strategy that really does have a lot of pitfalls in it if you don't know what you're doing. And the one I want to talk to you about today is the fact that when you sign an off-the-plan contract, it's actually a conditional contract, meaning that you can't get out. Once you sign that contract, there's no way to get out. There's no, like a normal property, when you go and buy a normal Torrens title property and it's a house, such as a house, you can add into the contract that you want a finance clause, you can add in that you want a building and pest clause, you want a due diligence clause. But when you do off the plan, you're literally locked in. It's conditional. You're unconditional is what I should be saying. You're unconditional. You can't get out. You've agreed to the terms. You've agreed to a purchase of a property in the future that hasn't been built off a bunch of drawings. Now, what are some of the things that could change in that time frame? Now, off the plans probably vary from 6 months to 5 years. Let's take a medium time frame, two years. There's a sunset clause in there, which means the developer often has double that time to complete the site. So if it's finished in 18 months, he has up to 3 years to complete it if he has delays. So just thinking about the sunset clause, thinking about the fact that it hasn't been built, thinking of the fact that they've got to sell all these properties first before they get the finance. And this is the reason they need an unconditional contract. When you sign the contract, the developer then goes to the banks, because the banks won't give them the finance unless they have contracts from people that are signed that they can't get out of. Imagine if the developer went along and had a contract signed with conditions and you can just pull out anytime you like. Well, there's no security for the developer or for the funder to give them finance. So these are kind of the issues that have now created the risk for the developer. And as the investor, you obviously need to be wary of this and know how to get around that. And so just back to kind of just thinking about some of the things that could go wrong. What could go wrong in that time frame? Well, the developer could go broke, right? So what happens there? Well, depending on how you've secured the property, whether it's a deposit bond, a bank guarantee or cash, that should be in a trust fund somewhere, or in a bank and a trust fund, the funds if it's cash, or the deposit bonds with an insurance company. So you shouldn't be at risk of losing your deposit. You would have had all those holding costs of the potentially interest, the fee of the deposit bond or the bank guarantee. If you pulled money from equity, you've had the cost of the interest. So you got some risk there, and it's also opportunity cost, 2 years of you being in the market and obviously not being able to do anything with that money. What else could go wrong? Well, the end product might not be exactly the same as what you thought. Can they make changes? Well, there's always, if you've ever seen an off-the-plan contract, it's double the size of most things. It's a couple of inches thick, and they've got variations that can happen. So the tiles that they might have showed you initially are not the same tiles. So they should go back and choose something that's as close as possible, because in that time frame, suppliers change and things like that as well. But there's still things that can change, and they may not be at the same standard that you want. And then you've got to go into a whole scenario of now arguing to try and turn that case around. The layout, the parking, there's a lot of things that can have slight variations. I'm not talking about major things, but enough to maybe make it less appealing to you. But the bigger thing is, well, what can happen if it's say a 3 to 4 year period? What can happen in your life at that time? Now you've got a property that you've signed for, you can't get out of the contract, you're liable for the 10%. If that property is $600,000, that's $60,000. If you can't settle, you're liable. They can take your deposit and chase you for costs on their loss if you can't settle. So you've got a substantial risk there if you want to try and pull out prematurely. If you do want to stay in the game and something changes in your life that's beyond your control, say you have a family and your wife stops work and your income drops and you now can't get a loan, say you lose your job, say you got sick, there's all these different variables with off the plan that if you don't know and you're not very certain about your future and things change, you're in a position where now you have to go and settle that. And let's be frank, most people are living pay packet to pay packet. So the concept of planning for a property and having all your finances in order 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the track is, not an easy one by any means. So the other thing is you can go and get the property and the banks may change their rules for the lending. And because there's, let's say, 100 or 200, and some of these big high rises these days have got, close to 1,000, hundreds of units in there, the banks may look at the units and see there's a massive oversupply and drop the valuation. And that's a major issue I'll talk about in another video. But you've got all these unknown variables that are a consequence of you signing an unconditional contract that you can't get out of. When you're doing a house, it's a conditional contract to your terms. You can pull out on your terms if the pest and building is not there, if it's got termites, if you can't get your finance, and it's a short time frame. It's 30 to 60 days, and so it's not a long time that you have to sit down and plan and wait for. So it's far less risky. So anyone that tells you off the plan is easy and you can make easy money and just buy it, and I haven't even spoken about if the market downturns and the property drops $100,000 in value by the time you get there, which is a different thing to a bank valuation. They're two issues again on their own. But bottom line, guys, just be aware that you're entering this unconditional contract with an off the plan. You can't get out. You generally can't pass it to another person. And now you've got to settle it regardless of your circumstances changing. And so whatever I do, I make sure you have at least 20% deposit up your sleeve by the time you get the settlement, and you're monitoring those markets very, very well and making sure you're very secure with your planning in your future, and you're not planning to change jobs or change a family, because all those things need to be taken into consideration. And if any of those things are coming up in the future, I wouldn't touch off the plan at all. It's way too risky. Anyway, guys, hope that's been useful today. Another off the plan con for you, and I'm coming up with lots of others that just happen to start with this one because I think it's one of the ones that has the most pitfalls, but I'll be looking at a lot more other subjects as I go along. It's David from the Xylem Zone. We've got a great event coming up soon at the end of October. We're going to do a 2-day event, which is going to be actually just taking people through a whole 2-day process of teaching them a lot of skills of how to get their situation lined up, to reorganize their life, to redesign their life, to get them the life they want. And that's through a whole lot of skills, from your setting your goals to your money to your finances, right through to investing, and including some principles in business as well. So keep an eye out for that, guys, and hope to catch up with you another day. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video, and talk to you soon.